Ready? So- And that was the most physical activity we were.
Calling to order the Independent Ethics Review Board on Thursday, January 30th at 6:30 p.m. 5:30 p.m. That's right. First item is public comment. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
No, Chair, we do not.
Thank you. The next item is the review and consideration of an action on the minutes on November 13th, 2024 meeting. Are there any changes or modifications to the minutes? May I have a motion to approve the minutes? Second. All in favor? Motion carries. Minutes approved. The next item is orientation. So we are going to have a lovely presentation by Meredith.
Well, thank you. Since we have some new members, I thought we'd start off with introductions.
Yeah.
So if Mr. Trowley, if you'd like to start, we'll just go around the table. Introductions.
Steve Trelly, live in Venetian Estates here in Sugarland.
I'm Doug Earl. Live in First Colony.
Andrew Wolf. After the defense.
Kristen Stegmiller,
Chair.
Chair.
Meredith Reedy, City Attorney, and over here I have Brandon Jackson. He's my executive assistant, so all emails and communications you'll get from him, and he's really the one in charge. So any communication should go to him rather than me or the chair, because he is the one that controls everything. He's the liaison.
Chris Crosby, I live in New Territory.
Sarah Calabrizzi, I'm in Greatwood.
Mark Martinez, I live in Sugar Mill.
Well, welcome to this board.
Welcome.
I am your staff person for the board, so I sit here and assist as needed for the meetings. So we're going to go ahead and start off with a review and discussion on your purpose, your roles and your responsibilities. And this is going to be kind of a general overview of what you do in orientation as to open meetings and open records. So I'm not sure if you have previously served on government boards, but we are subject to the Open Meetings Act, which means that you cannot have a quorum of you together in one room discussing what your nature of your business is for the city, which would be for this board, the ethics board. So you can't have 4 of you together talking about an ethics item, or it is a violation of the Open Meetings Act. You also can't meet if there's not an agenda posted. Fortunately for you, we have a fantastic group of people sitting in the back, including Linda. She's your city clerk. She will post all agendas for you. We will go ahead and meet all statutory requirements for the posting of the agendas, which is 72 hours in advance of the meeting. And we will have the topics listed on the agenda that you can discuss. I caution you not to talk about anything that's not on the agenda, because that would be a Class C misdemeanor. Sometimes the district attorney is even angry, or it could be a beating. You might will spend some time down there in county jail. I hear the prisoners or the inmates are the ones that cook for you, so you probably don't want to enjoy that cuisine. So in addition to the Open Meetings Act, we also have the Open Records Act. Okay.
Yeah.
We appreciate the thoroughness.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Notice you never had their cake.
No, I can't say that I've enjoyed that, fortunately. For as far as the Open Records Act, so under state law, people can make requests for documents related to city government and city business. So anything that you say and do in this room is subject to release under the Open Records Act. So I would caution you that if we do send you communications back and forth, like emails, try to keep your humor at a better level than my humor, and don't put things in there like that, because they are subject to review by the citizens, and they expect you to be more serious than they expect me to be. So there's also criminal penalties with that, but we will do everything we can to keep you from violating both of those. So now that you've had that great big excitement, yes, ma'am.
Reply to all.
Okay, we also try very hard to blind copy everybody, because one of the biggest mistakes you can make is reply to all, which becomes a quorum. So no, 3 of you at any point in time can talk, but if 3 of you, if one of those 3 go and talk to a 4th person, you now have what's called a walking quorum. So this board has 7 members and 2 alternates. And so you'll periodically see 9 people sitting in this room. As far as regular meetings, we ask that everybody attend all the meetings, because all the meetings relate to training, and you get an opportunity to kind of discuss the different topics and see what the board's purview is. When we have a case that comes up in front of us, there'll be 7 people that sit on the dais. So depending on attendance or conflicts, some of the alternates may have to sit up there for that. So the duties of this board is you are the ethics board for the city. So you have jurisdiction essentially over all elected and appointed officials. And we have a code of conduct, which hopefully you've gotten an opportunity to see, but if not, we're gonna go over it this evening. And if a complaint is filed, this board is the judge and jury of that complaint. And so there's a list of sanctions that you can impose if you believe someone has violated the code, and we'll get to that when we go through the training. And you all make that decision. The only thing that you cannot do is remove somebody from office. So you can make a recommendation to city council that an appointed official could be removed, but because the elected officials are elected into office, they can only be elected out of office. So you could also make a recommendation of recall, but you do not have that power to do that. So that's a very, very fast overview. Kind of our meeting schedule is we meet quarterly. You go over, unless you have a case, and you'll go over, you'll do your public comment, your minutes, and then I typically provide things called articles of interest. So I look around the state, and sometimes I have people that send me things from New York.
Places too.
That show different violations of elected officials. And so as a group, you all sit there and go over these articles and discuss how you would interpret them under the city's code, what violations you think there would be, what additional information you might need, and then what your outcome would be if you thought that was actually a violation. The purpose of that is to allow you to practice and kind of get to know how everybody else feels, but also under the code, I can write legal opinions. We call them get out of jail free cards. So if an elected or appointed official has a question related to any conduct they want to take, and they're concerned it may be a violation, they can provide me an email with all that information in it, and I then write a legal opinion based on what I think would happen if a complaint is filed to this board and what this board would determine. So going through your articles of interest allows me to have a good understanding of what the feel of the board is as far as what a violation would be and what the extent the punishment would be. So I understand that it's not a bright line. This is not a black and white. As the board's composition changes over time, the opinions are going to change. And the purpose of that is to reflect the citizenry. So y'all are the moral compass of our residents, and that's why you've been selected to serve on this board. So that was really, really fast.
Can I echo something there?
Please join in.
As a board member, those discussions I feel are very helpful and productive because one, we all have different perspectives. So you get to understand different points of view with respect to possible violations of our code. And two, when we've had prior complaints arise in our history, it did not feel so far out of the realm of understanding our procedures, interpretation, and what the protocol would look like, that it was easy to slide into what we needed to do to actually effectuate our operations. So, you know, we meet quarterly. And so even through that time, you don't think the same way as when you're having these discussions. So you dial into what the code states and what our requirements are and how we would discuss and interpret that. And so it kind of keeps that critical thinking sharp. So if something does come up, we're accustomed to having these discussions, and we're also comfortable with having varying opinions because we all don't think the same. We have different opinions on situations that could arise. And so it's helpful to already have that respectful dialogue and that level of comfort of having conversations around these types of topics because they are sensitive. We're talking about somebody's, you know, it's regulatory in the sense that it's documented and it's a formal code of ethics, but we are talking about ethics in some sense. So it can be very personal to people.
Kind of like fire drills. We
Yes.
practice so that in the eventuality that something does come up, we're familiar with the document and how we work.
Doug, Steve, do y'all have anything to add?
Just that it's okay to disagree. You know, as has been stated, you know, we all come from different perspectives, and you know, I've learned some things about how I would react, and so sometimes I change my mind on things. You know, I feel like I'm a principled person, but when you have a different perspective, you know, so it's okay to say what you think.
Bring an open mind to the table.
Because your opinion might be new, well, it will be, but a small comment could go, oh, we didn't see that, or we didn't think of that. So whatever you have to say or think, always add it.
It is helpful. I mean, we just went through this iterative process of proposing revisions to the code itself. And it was, I don't know, 6, 8, 9, how long did it take?
A while.
It took a good amount of time because we had these great discussions around different sections. Are there gaps? What are other cities doing? And things of that nature. So I think it enhanced our familiarity with it, but it also, you know, there were so many times that somebody brought up, well, what about this situation that could occur? That wasn't something that would have been top of mind for me. So, I mean, all feedback is valuable in this type of a setting.
And I know that you both went through the interview process. Everybody on the board has gone through that interview process. So y'all were picked because council liked your answers and believe that you are a good thermometer of what the moral, you know, ethics of our community should be. And so there is an expectation that you're not all going to have the exact same opinion because as I'm sure you know, our residents don't have the exact same opinion. So you were selected because the council believed that you had the ability to speak out and hold your ground and say, these are my concerns based on what I've just heard. And, you know, it's collective. So. Right, then. The next item, madam.
Yes, the next item is ethics training. And we're going to be receiving training relating to the Sugarland Code of Ethical Conduct and state laws regulating ethics and reporting responsibilities of city officials.
This is required annually. And I know some of you have already seen this presentation. I do make it a game every year because I know better through comedy and I'm hoping you do as well. This is going to be a little bit different presentation than I do for the other boards because you are the ethics board. And so rather than just going through the whole thing, we will be pausing and talking about things because it's important for me to have an understanding of how you interpret the code so that I can do my job. So this year's game and probably next year's game is a play on the game of life. So we're going to do the game of ethics, and because I'm ethical, obviously I don't own these images, and I will go ahead and give Hasbro credit.
Fair use.
Very well, still, I gave Monopoly people credit and Trivial Pursuit. I'm gonna continue along. So there's 3 objectives when we go through this training every year, is you're gonna receive an overview of the Code of Ethics, and you're gonna do it as required by the Code of Ethics, because that is actually a violation. If you don't have it, a complaint could be brought in front of you, or you could be removed from the board. And I'm hoping that learning all this will help you and all the other elected and appointed officials serve their term with no violations. It's not like I don't want y'all to have something to do, but yet I really want everybody to follow the rules. And you have nothing to do, just practice instead of having a real hearing. So who gets to play? The Code of Ethics applies to all members of City Council, all current members of administrative and advisory boards, which are appointed. And then sometimes we let the former people play as well. And that goes more towards confidentiality and representation and the like. And then candidates for city council, they get to play in as far as campaign contributions. So there's 8 basic rules. And after this item, as we go through it, you're going to go through the revisions that this board has made recommendations on to city council. So you'll see them section by section, but I'll just give you an overview. So these are the top 8 rules of the game that you need to be successful as an elected or appointed official for the city of Sugar Land. So the first one is a state law, conflicts of interest and a special economic benefit. So if you, your spouse, your parent, or your child have 10% ownership or more, or 15,000 of the fair market value of a real business entity, then you must file a disclosure form and you must file it with the city clerk's office. Also, 10% or more of your previous year's income. If it's from that business entity, you must file a form with the city secretary's, the city clerk's office. And if you have real property, it's the rule of 2.5. So if you own $2,500 or more of real property, you are considered to have a special economic benefit. Once you determine you have a conflict of interest and you do file that form, you have to leave the room. State law does not require you to step out of the room, but because we are home to the Astros, there's been some rumors that they throw signs. I know y'all don't, but just to keep with the tradition that we are fine upstanding people. If you have a conflict, we ask that you step out in the hallway and then we invite you back in once the item is finished. I'm going to go through this somewhat quickly, so if you have questions, please stop me. And so you must file, like I said, the conflicts disclosure statement, and you must abstain and leave the room. So you also get to brag if you're related to a vendor. And this presentation I give to all the boards, so not all of these are going to apply to you, But because you are the ethics board, you are the judge and jury of the other boards, it's important that you know all these provisions. So there's also a requirement that when a vendor files a contract with the city and we award it, or any board that is reviewing that contract, whether it be a recommendation or approval, that they disclose whether, and it's always going to be them, their spouse, their children, their parents. So keep that in mind. If any of those individuals receive taxable income from that vendor within of $2,500 in the previous year. And then I have a fancy chart if you ever want to have it with a 3rd degree and 2nd degree, but I can't keep them in mind. So I generally say if it's your parents, your child, or your spouse, you pretty much fall within that requirement. So gifts, like I said earlier, we have a great relationship with the district attorney's office. I like to call these gifts. State law calls them gifts. The district attorney tends to call them bribes. So because of that, state law and the code of ethics requires you to fill out a form and file it with the city clerk's office once you receive gifts from any vendor that's exceeding $100 cumulative per vendor within a rolling 12 months. Now you see there's an asterisk next to the word food because food is extra special. So you can do lodging, transportation, or entertainment up to $100 per vendor, or excuse me, up to $99 per vendor per 12 months and not tell anybody about it. Once you get that extra dollar and hit the 100, you do have to file the form. So food is special. So it's $100 if they just give you a gift card or send you to dinner and that's it, or a gift basket. If you have the misfortune of having to sit across from the table with them and close enough that you can actually have a conversation with that vendor, then you are rewarded by the opportunity of having an appetizer or dessert, maybe even a take-home bag, or if you choose a beverage, because you do get up to $500 as compensation for having to spend the time with that vendor. And if you decide not to, it's a misdemeanor. You get to go, like I said, go spend some time with the county, you get a roommate, matching clothes, and some interesting cuisine. So there's additional rules, 5 additional rules, doing business with the city. So city council members are prohibited from entering into any substantial business contracts with the city. Substantial business contract is $1,000 or more, and that is cumulative of their entire term. So if they served 3 years, it's 3 years. If they serve full 9 years, it's 9 years. It cannot exceed that $1,000. Representations and appearances. This is where you talk about wearing a hat. So if you go in front of a board, or you write on Nextdoor, or post on social media, or all the other revisions that you all have talked about for all the electronic communications that I don't remember exist, you have to say that in my capacity as a resident of Sugar Land, or as your neighbor, blah, 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 or in my capacity as a member of the Independent Ethics Review Board. It's very important that you say which hat you're wearing. It is more important for boards such as planning and zoning and city council because they tend to get in the weeds more and get a lot more public opinion on them because they're doing things like apartments and zoning and they get more interest from the public. It's important that they know if they're talking in their personal capacity or if in any way they might be representing the interests of the city or their board. So that's very important. Representations and appearances also includes if you were to go, and it doesn't apply to this board, but within 2 years after service on your board, if you go in front of your board for payment representing somebody, that's a violation. You can go and represent a business interest for free, but you cannot get paid for 2 years to go in front of your same board. They do ask that there be a distance in time, so it doesn't look like there's special treatment occurring because of your relationship with your previous board members. Misuse and disclosure of official information. So this board and a few other boards have the opportunity to get confidential legal advice. Our economic development boards and the council also get financial information related to certain corporations. We ask that that information not be shared. It's a state law violation under the Open Meetings Act, and it's also a violation of the Code of Ordinances. Sometimes you can use that confidential information, like the ethics, excuse me, not the ethics, the financial boards can find out that we are purchasing a property or we are offering an incentive to a business that may be expanding, and you will have inside information and can then buy the property next to it or make a business decision that the rest of the public would not have access to. And that would be a violation because by serving on a board or being elected, you should not have any additional rights to benefit you different than that of the public. Participation in procurement. So this is where state law is very clear on what steps must be followed for the city to enter into a contract over $50,000. We are very conscientious of that state law and we don't want to violate it. And so we have made it clear in the Code of Ethics that a council member cannot participate in procurement. They cannot go around the process and try to get additional information for the bidders. They cannot promise the bidder that they'll get something, and they have absolutely no ability to select which is the best vendor. As staff who is trained in that, staff makes a recommendation, says this is the one that complies with the bidding requirements. This is the lowest bidder or the lowest responsible bidder. This is what we recommend you approve. Council either ups or downs, either yes, you approve it, or no, you don't. They don't get to say, well, we like a vendor number 3 better. Otherwise, we're not complying with state law. If we find out that a vendor or a council person has gone around the process and tried to get involved, that vendor is disqualified from the bid offering. We will not go into business with them because we don't want to cheat. We want to comply with state law. And then the 5th rule is campaign contributions. So, and this is the one that applies to anybody running for office. If you are accepting campaign contributions, and I've yet to find an elected official who does it, you cannot accept a campaign contribution from somebody who is suing the city for damages, excluding court costs and attorney's fees of $25,000 or more. We do this because we don't want it to look like the person has an opportunity to buy a verdict. Because you do have going into a closed executive session, which goes back to the official information as to where we want to settle this. And we don't want there to be any question about loyalty, as that campaign, that person may be buying a certain outcome, or they come out and say, hey, look, thank you for your campaign contribution. This is the range we're looking at. And so the campaign contributions, if we determine that because you do have to file reports with the city clerk's office. If we determine that you have received one from somebody, we're going to try to notify you, but we also ask that that elected official does not accept it. So. I went too fast. I'm sorry, Nicole. So where can I read a full text? Well, you're about to read the full text because we're going to go over it. But if this is presentation to another board, I give them the reference. It's chapter 2 of the Code of Ordinances. And if you have questions, I can always issue a written opinion. That is one of my jobs. It is to help this board implement the rules. And I mentioned earlier the get out of jail free card. So I am the liaison to this board. I sit here and listen to your descriptions and your discussion related to the articles of interest. And that gives me an idea of just what your board's belief systems are, so that when I get that ethics question, I can come back and say, you know, in my experience working with the board, I believe they're going to find this. The wonderful thing about that is that, right or wrong, they get out of jail free for you unless it was just so completely outrageous and I'm the one that's in trouble and not them. Because I was the one that was too stupid to be able to figure out what it is that y'all are going to do, and I gave them advice that was bad. So it's always a good idea, if someone asks, come to me first, because I can say, boy, that's bad. You're going to get a sanction of whatever, because I've seen the board talk about this behavior. Or no, if you do exactly what you're telling me you're going to do, I don't see a violation for these reasons. And so we go through all that. If someone doesn't follow the rules, we have to have a written complaint. It must be signed and sworn and filed with the city clerk's office within 1 year of the violation. It must contain the name of the person who violated the code of ethics, and that has to be an elected or an appointed official, because the code does not apply to any city employees or residents that are not on the board. And it must be signed and sworn, and it must clearly state what the violation is. You can't just say, I think board member Bob violated the code. You've got to tell us what you think Bob did, because that's not fair to you all. You can't just sit there and go, well, let's see, and go down the list. And you can say, you look at it and you go, you know, I don't think they picked the right one. I think it's really this one, and y'all can act on it. But you do not have the obligation to say Bob violated it, and then you all have to find what the violation may be. And they also should include sufficient facts to let you to go, yes, this, if true, is a violation, or now this is crazy. We don't have anything to do with whether or not Bob bathes his dog twice a week or twice a month. We don't care. Bob's dog's his own business. So once that complaint is filed with the city clerk's office, it is sent to me for review. I review to see if the person is subject to the code, if the violation is subject to the code, if it's signed and sworn, and if the time is within 1 year. If it is, I forward it to you all to decide. That is my only obligation. I don't make an opinion as to whether or not, yeah, this is stupid, or no, it's not. That is your job, not mine. I'm never going to step into your shoes. I was not interviewed or appointed to your board. I'm just here to help. And so you all have 2 meetings. You have one meeting where it's the initial review of the complaint, and you all look at it and you go, well, if it looks like it met everything, because I do give you an opinion that says, yes, it should be go forward, or no, it shouldn't because it's missing these items. And you go, well, if everything here is true, it might be a violation. Let's move on. Or you go, there is no way, even if everything in here is true, that it would ever be a violation. They actually followed the rules, and then you dismiss it. You also have the ability to dismiss it because it's frivolous. And the code lists some different things as to what makes a frivolous complaint, and we'll go into that in just a few minutes. And so once you decide whether to move it forward or not, if you move it forward, then you have a full-blown hearing. You swear in the witnesses and you go through it all. And you spend a couple of quality hours with each other, hearing about some behavior that may or may not have been disappointing from some of our elected or appointed officials, and then you render your decision and any sanctions that you believe are appropriate. So let's go talk about the sanctions. So these are the 7 potential sanctions that you all can initiate. You go from the letter of notification, basically a slap on the wrist, all the way down to, you know what, we're gonna file from the newspaper, we think this elected official should be removed. So now that we've gone through this whole thing, y'all have questions, or y'all ready to just kind of wade through this and see how it goes?
Really great.
All right, so let's spin our little spinner thing. So this time, we have a council member who is interested in increasing revenue and promoting tourism here in the city. And they want to install kayak-friendly boat ramps over the Brazos River turnaround and the Oyster Creek over by Constellation Field. So first question for you all to have discussion. Does it matter that this council member's daughter owns a rent by the hour inflatable kayak company? This is active participation, guys.
Is she bidding on the project?
Sorry?
Is she bidding on the project?
Well, he's making the suggestion, knowing that this is his daughter's business. Do you think that's a concern?
That's a concern.
Potentially.
Potentially, but you need more facts?
Well, I think it's okay to think that it's a good idea. Now, if she's in the bidding process, that's another issue. I mean, a related issue, but
But you're okay with him making the recommendation, knowing that there's a potential that she could.
Yes, purchasing and those.
Personally.
So
I'm not saying,
Sorry.
wouldn't it be up to purchasing or whatever, fine?
It depends. It's not really like a bid type thing. It's gonna be more of an economic development type thing. But the question here is whether or not this board would think, just by merely suggesting it, knowing that his child could benefit, would you consider it to be a conflict of interest?
Well, there are some red flags, but that's an assumption that she lives here and would potentially profit from this. If she lives in League City or in another state and has merely gotten an idea from his daughter that, hey, this would be great, you should recommend this, well, then I don't see there a conflict.
That you've actually picked right up on the thing. And so it matters on whether or not she could receive, because it's the spouse, child, or parents. If they can receive a special economic benefit, then you have a conflict. So that is a very important fact. So excellent job. First day on the job, you figured it out. Yay. So, so yes, it's a potential conflict of interest, but you need more facts. Okay, so this parent is super supportive. And like all parents, he made a few phone calls and he gets the boat ramp idea on the next Parks Board meeting agenda for review and feedback. And so if you're not familiar with the Parks Board, they are an advisory board. And they make recommendations to staff who then take action as far as moving up items on P&Z or city council. And so a boat ramp would be a parks amenity, so it would have to go through them. So is there any violation or concerns that he used his position as a council member to get an idea on a parks agenda? Would that be any abuse of his office, any special treatment that the rest of the public cannot have?
Well, now things are starting to be a little sus.
Yeah, I would think so.
They will get continually more questionable.
Increasingly.
At the end, you're to go, oh my gosh.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hoping you at the end, you think, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But do you think that there's a violation? What would y'all think?
Yeah, if planting the idea, throwing a suggestion out there, I think this would be a great idea to pursue it. Are they in a bid process? Red flags, yes.
But the fact that he used his position as a council member to get it on a parks board, whereas a resident doesn't have that authority, is that a problem for you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Let's go. All right, so Parks Board is loving the idea. And they said, you know what, we also need food trucks, because you're gonna be hungry when you're out there, you know, boating around in the Brazos or Oyster Creek. So they say, hey, let's add food trucks to this plan. So once we got the Parks Board, we're now at the PNZ. As this item is being presented, a planning and zoning commissioner texts their spouse, which let's get around the part that you're not supposed to have your phone on during a meeting, so ignore that violation. But the PNC commissioner texts their spouse and said, hey, honey, we are gonna go buy that food truck. This is great. Do we have violations? What violation do you think we have?
They had inside knowledge that they used before it was available to the public.
Is it inside if it was presented at a Parks Board meeting?
Okay. I see the point.
The trick question.
It was.
That's why you have to read, not just listen to me, because I leave stuff out. But yeah, that was a trick question. So that was not inside information because it was publicly presented at the Parks Board. So I rolled up my sleeve
You
there.
got me.
I got everybody at every board so far.
You got us?
Every board has failed. I mean, even council didn't catch that. I was so proud of myself. Hey, I gotta live on the edge, right? So this is still going forward. Everybody is still on board with this. And so now we're at SLDC, which is the 4A Economic Development Corporation, and is made up of all council members. So it's basically the city council wearing a different hat. And 4B. And, you know, lucky for this daughter, our council member is also one of the 3 council members that sits on 4B. So he is in charge and gets to sit on 2 boards that offer incentives and money. So both of the boards think it's a great idea and they want to offer some incentives to make sure that the city gets the best kayak company possible out of all of them, whether it be League City or another state, they want the best ones. And so let's just ignore limitations on state law. Both boards determined that daughter's company is the clear winner and offer her all the money they can under the statute. We have a problem yet?
We have a problem.
We have a problem.
Did he vote on it?
Aha, good. Okay, so
Did he recuse himself?
Did he file a form
Right.
and leave the room and
Okay.
abstain?
if he filed the form and left the room, do we have a violation?
Don't think we have a problem.
You do or don't? That's a perception or an actual violation.
Actual violation.
This is for ignoring state law.
Well, I put that in there because I didn't want to go through all the rules and regulations. For 2 days.
To ignore, violate the law. Done something.
Okay, so if he filed an abstention and walked out, you still think it's a violation?
I don't necessarily think so, but if we are determining that there's a prospective economic benefit, that should have been done upstream. Right? So I mean, I would say, yes, there's a violation because all the prior actions have already occurred. And so then that's where I would find the violation. If the daughter was determined to be subject to receive the benefit of the recommendation and the phone call, I feel like upstream, the violation has already occurred. If you know, we didn't know and it's possible and who knows why and the motivating factors, and they disclosed it, say perhaps he did not make the recommendation, right? This came up on the agenda, not from his action. Filed the disclosure, abstained and didn't vote. I don't think there'd be a violation if it wasn't on there because of his action.
Okay, any other thoughts?
I think there's a huge perception problem.
Okay, well, then if he didn't file the form and he sat through it all, we all agree there's a violation.
Yes. And voted.
And vote, yeah. Okay, so we got financing secured, Parks Board's got their endorsement, we got the food trucks, they grant the daughter an exclusive license to operate both boat ramps. I'm guessing based on your response to the last slide, you still think it depends on whether or not his participation. If he participated fully along the way, we got a slam dunk violation. And we may or may not, depending on what his actions were. Okay, so it's still fact determinant. We still don't have, well, Mr. Trolley has a determination, but everybody else is still, we need more facts. Okay, I'll give you some more facts. 6 months, it is just amazing. It is better than we could ever imagine, making money hand over fist. Unfortunately, it's Labor Day weekend. It's the end of the season. And as I'm sure you all know, by living in Sugar Land, Oyster Creek and Brazos have alligators. Perhaps not all of the visitors using the boat ramp did, but we all know they do. And so somebody got bit. So now our injured kayaker has sued the kayak company, but they recognize there's no money in this startup. She used all of her money to relocate from out of state and Lake City to this location. So they decided we're gonna go ahead. The people talk. It's interactive here. And so as a result, they went ahead and added the city onto the lawsuit because obviously the city has the money and it's our boat ramps. We just let somebody else run them. So now we're in a closed executive session talking about this lawsuit and I'm giving information. What concerns would you have related to me having this discussion on a lawsuit and this council member?
How much is a lawsuit for?
Well, it's gonna be above 50,000 because I have authority to settle for under 50 and I'm not taking that to council. What, but why do you ask that?
Because you had said there's a $25,000.
For campaign contributions. But there's no campaign contributions. A kayaker is not gonna come.
I thought you said, well, there's something in there, if city's being sued
If
over a certain amount,
if for
excluding.
somebody giving you contribution to your campaign.
So campaign contributions,
All right, okay.
you cannot receive campaign contributions from somebody who is suing the city for damages greater than 25,000 or more. This, I promise you that this kayaker is not making campaign contributions to anybody. They're pretty unhappy with this. So take that violation off. Can that council member sit in executive session to discuss the lawsuit?
I don't believe you can.
Isn't it that first one where the $10,000 for any member of your family or the business? Business.
So conflict of interest. Okay,
But in the executive session, that is private,
that is confidential information.
confidential information that could impact, you know, the situation with the city and the daughter. And so there's definitely gonna be conflict there because both parties are getting sued, right? And who's gonna be primary on the,
So you see two violations then. You see the fact that there's a special economic interest, the 10% or more, plus the fact that it's confidential information that he cannot share with his daughter. Do y'all see the other ones?
He's conflicted out of the outcome, right? So, I mean,
Well, either way, he's paying.
yeah.
Yeah.
He can't influence the decision, so he cannot be part of the discussion in the executive session because his influence would be conflict.
To be biased, correct. Okay, so those are two violations I saw. I'm on track with y'all's thinking. This is good. So city council goes ahead and settles this lawsuit. We go ahead and take the the exclusive license to operate the boat ramps away, and we just open up to everybody free of charge, basically unloading our liability. You're on your own. It's not our fault. There's an alligator. Have fun.
You put a sign up.
Oh, there's definitely signs. Yeah, there's not signs everywhere saying if there's flood, there's an alligator. So we have another local resident and he's a business owner, but he's mad. And he's filed a complaint with you because he really wanted an opportunity to compete with that license that the council member's daughter got. And he wanted that incentive payment. So he's filed that. So now we get to the day of reckoning. And if this is a regular council or board presentation, that's when we would go through all the violations. But because you're an ethics board and I need to know your thought process, we went through them all along. So for fun, let's just say that we have some pretty significant conflict of interest violations here. What sanctions would you all want to impose? And do you need me to go back to the list of sanctions?
Everything.
Everything. All right, Mr. Wolf, you are in a mood. All right, so these are your options. What would you want to impose on this council member? Or did you see violations of any other elected or appointed officials along the way, aside from the P and Z member who I put the trick question on the food truck in?
Lease number 5.
I'm gonna say between 5 and 6.
Sort of everything.
Okay, things aren't cumulative.
And so, and you want to find them to let them know this is not acceptable.
Okay, so you would definitely impose a fine.
I'm fine with that. Should have never got to that point.
Right. And then depending on their level of influence and interference in getting that, I could see 6 as well.
Okay, so it's an elected official, it'd be 7.
I'd have to be 7, sorry.
Well,
No, I'm sorry.
Z,
No, this is city council.
City council member.
The PNC
Z, I would,
was the trick question.
okay.
They did not have inside information on the food truck, but that was a trick question to see if y'all paid attention to earlier presentations.
P and Z
It could
person.
lead down a path if they were filing for a permit in an inappropriate way or something to that effect.
It could. The path we took the alligator path. So y'all are between 5 and 7. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I like obviously 5, but I like the idea of a collective, like the fine accompanying like a written reprimand so that it is documented and published. And presumably that if it's published, then the community is aware of this issue. And then what other further action could possibly come from people of Sugar Land versus this board.
Okay, so I will tell you that your board procedures require that if you find someone has violated the code, we do post that on your website so that everybody can see. If you're innocent, we kind of make it all quietly go away because if we figure you're embarrassed enough, and unless you ask us to clear your name, we kind of don't want to put you out there any longer than we have to, then you've already gone through the process. But if you're guilty, we are posting that on our website for everybody to see. And we will put a link to your hearing where that person, the residents or whoever wants to, will be able to hear the entire testimony as to what you used to make your decision. So it will definitely be posted. If you have a recommendation of recall, that will also be posted and will be read at a council meeting. Be an item on the council agenda.
You go back to the complaint or the description of the complaint on here.
Sure. So,
No, I'm sorry, the
The scenario,
scenario,
oh, okay. Which one?
last one.
Okay, the day of reckoning.
Well, the one prior to that.
Okay, tell me when to stop.
So a local resident owner's mad, files a complaint. He wanted to compete. So the removal of office has me concerned. I guess it all depends on what he is able to, the owner is able to produce in terms of what loss or potential loss by not having an opportunity to participate.
so
Please, this is your vote.
to file an ethics complaint to this board, I do not personally have to have had a detriment or an impact to me. So I can say, I'm seeing city council member Wolf acting out of alignment or in violation of the code of ethical conduct. I have an obligation as an ethical citizen that I'm gonna file this complaint that I've seen something occur that should not occur. I don't have to actually have it hurt me or harm me in any capacity.
Can I ask for clarification?
Sure.
Were you saying the financial as far as the business person or as far as the council member?
Business person.
I was checking, I thought for some reason you were saying that the council member, it would be concerning to you based on the dollar value of their impact. Okay, so the business owners.
No, I mean, the way I read this, the local resident business owner potentially lost or could have made,
Yes.
you know, a profit and he had or she had the opportunity to compete. And is the complaint because there was a potential loss of revenue for this company and business expansion or whatever? I guess to me, it's just, is there more to the complaint than just
So the motive of the complaint.
right?
Which could impact when we look at it initially, right? Where whether it would be frivolous and wasn't that in the, if our new revisions are integrated, we took some of that into account. If what I hear you say is that somebody's motivated in a way that is. I'm trying to think of scenarios. We talked about different opportunities where somebody's just filing a complaint that's baseless, but it's to do harm to that other person. Right? So like, okay, I know that this is public and, you know, I'm upset for this reason, but I think in my opinion, the motivation doesn't matter if there is an actual violation or something that looks like it could be substantiated by this board. So if I file something and provide evidence to this board that says, here's what the code says, here's what has transpired, and here's my evidence of what has transpired, I don't know that I, as a board member, care why, if it actually occurred. That's my personal view, not the.
Yeah, I guess I'm bothered by when he came, I mean, he's too late. Why did he file that complaint
Upstream.
when he lost a bid? I mean,
It's still within a year, though. It's still within a year. So he did meet the time frame.
yeah, but Sean, he lost a bid. They awarded the daughter, they said, hey, you're doing the deal. Nobody else got an opportunity to do that deal. I would have filed the complaint right then and there. What do you mean? I can't bid on this?
So do you think that your determination would be based on the time it took him to file the complaint?
Question on the money from 4B, that's some city, some private.
No, 4A and 4B are the city's economic development corporations, and they are funded out of sales tax.
So it's city money.
Yes. And those two boards offer incentives to encourage businesses to locate within the city or make improvements that will allow us to bring in a bigger tax base, which more than makes up for the sales tax they have given out.
Because one of the things I found was the money that they were given for the business, where did it come from? Was it sale? Okay, if it's tax dollars versus a public-private partnership and it came from a private person or company versus tax dollars.
Okay, so it is sales tax dollars, which are treated a little bit differently than ad valorem taxes. We have a lot more restrictions on what we could use those for.
Still came here and went out from here.
Yes, sir.
That's
I'll
the money.
walk back a little bit of my statement, because mine's not a blanket statement, so I don't care about motivation in the sense of like, if there's like an egregious violation, monetary impact and things of that nature. If somebody's filing a complaint that you did not complete your ethics board training and I'm doing it because I'm trying to be retaliatory in some capacity, that impacts how I would probably receive it from a motivation standpoint. But if it's something that's completely in violation, egregious, monetary in nature, did harm to others, then I'm not sure I care about the motivation of the filer.
I think back to,
So it is gray. I feel like it's not
We are.
I said it very cut and dry, but I'm like, I mean, it matters what the complaint is. It matters the
Sure.
timing and like,
and I think back to Steve's point, let's talk about the timing. If a year had passed with no incident. And then, the city decides to do away with it, would the business owner file a complaint, and would there be any basis to it?
Would he be able to file the complaint because it's outside that year? No.
11 months. He waited 11 months, waited to see profitability.
It would not have made it to you. It would have been dismissed if he had filed the complaint at month 13 or 14 because of the time period. So timing is very important, yes. Chris, you're being very quiet.
When Chris speaks, it's always, we just.
No, it's not.
He has a point, absolutely.
I'm struggling with the business owner, again, to like Steve's point, the timing of it. What's going on with his motivation? I agree. If I believed that there was some sort of impropriety in the letting of the contract to begin with, then he should have filed it then. Now, granted, he's got the year, but it's suspect to me that he's waiting until an incident and then saying, well, here, I'm gonna go push this even further.
But should somebody who filed a complaint be penalized if they're following the guidelines?
No, they technically can't.
I think what clouds it for me right now in this discussion is we know the daughter is related to the council member, and does the business owner following the complaint have that same
Yes.
knowledge?
Let's go with yes.
Okay.
Now, I will tell you, this is purposely gray because I want the boards, every board to have a discussion, but especially you all, because you're never gonna get a case, well, I can't imagine you're ever gonna get a case that is so cut and dry that you go, well, that's been fun. There's gonna be nuances and questions and things you have to think about.
To that end, even, so we'll talk about procedures and whatnot, but we have like an initial discussion as to whether or not we vote to investigate. So we review the complaint and the information, or investigate, have a hearing. I don't know the right languages for that, but basically where we have a preliminary hearing to review what we have thus far just within the complaint. And do we dismiss as frivolous, or say, yes, we need to look into that and have a hearing and get more information, and what information do we need to hear?
And that's where you give us a list of witnesses and documents for us.
The grand jury process, is this something that needs to be looked into further, or does nothing happen?
So some of this, we have dialogue even as early as that, not dialogue as to whether or not we, if it's going to be investigated or not. So we're not going to like, and I don't use the phrase litigate, we're not gonna go all the way into the weeds, but we do already upstream would have a dialogue on, does this need to be dismissed? What is the complainant, what did they allegedly do?
And the motivation will
And
be.
what is the motivation? Because the motivation could come into play with respect to the frivolous component, like if we want to dismiss it as frivolous. And what the complaint is. So we have these dialogues even as early as, even if we're not doing a public hearing. So, I mean, it's still public here. The terminology is getting me.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it's still a public meeting, but the initial step that we have to do includes like debate and dialogue. And we've had discussion on all of the ones that have ever come forth, whether or not we've decided to move forward with an actual public hearing and an investigation or not. We still had a thoughtful dialogue and discussion, even if that at that first stage. I had a point in here somewhere, but I've lost it since then. But basically, to your point, we would discuss motivation even early on, and we would have like a thoughtful conversation as to whether or not we would want to move forward with the complaint.
Part of our dialogue as we were doing the recommended revisions here is the whole smell test thing, right? This doesn't smell right. Unless he really did recuse himself in each of the phase and file the form. But if he didn't, then we've got some issues that I think would have to be addressed early on.
Well, and I would have questions, who else knew that the daughter owned this? Because you have the entire council,
Right.
and we may not, I don't know the rapport and relationship within that structure, but I would be willing to
They know.
bet.
Guess who had a birthday, guess who had a. baby.
Correct.
They know.
So, I mean, and so then I would have questions for,
Why did they?
the host of.
So your questions would be whether or not they had a reporting obligation. as well.
Correct,
Yes.
correct.
Madam,
They could be in violation as well. They may not be, or not violate.
Well.
Mhm.
That would be for y'all to decide.
Yeah.
If it's a violation, but.
But you would, I mean, you would have a
Obligation.
reporting obligation.
Yes, sir.
does someone's motivation make a difference, whether this guy complaining? I can see where he's got a motivation, but if somebody else makes the same complaint but has no quote unquote motivation, does that matter to us?
That's a question I would ask you all.
Okay.
It's not mine to answer, but you have provisions that say you can dismiss it if you believe it to be frivolous. But and you may say, yes, his motivation is why we're not gonna move forward. Or you may say, there's a smell test, but the motivation may impact what you think the sanctions will be. And this is probably a good time for me to let you guys know that if a complaint does get filed, once I send my review of it met the qualifications, I step out and you have outside legal counsel that helps you the rest of the way, because I'm conflicted, because the elected and appointed officials are my client. And so then I'm like, one client here, one client here. And so to preserve the integrity of the proceeding, I do have outside counsel that comes in, just so that you have that information right up front. So a lot of this is new for me because I don't get to sit there and watch it.
And we can go into executive session to receive legal
Nice.
counsel or legal.
Yes, ma'am, but you cannot issue an opinion back there.
Correct.
But to answer your question to me, the violation is or is not a violation dependent on someone's motivation for making a complaint.
So I lean in that camp typically, like if it's wrong, it's wrong. But that's why I walked back my statement earlier. I could come up with scenarios where a different type of complaint, the motivation could come into play in the entire situation. So for me, like, I lean towards if it's wrong and it's a violation, it's wrong. But some of this is gray, and so I do want to, like, I do open my mind and my door for, like, okay, I could theorize that there's scenarios where I would care about the motivation and what's preceding the complaint.
Okay.
But I agree, like, I tend to fall on that, yeah.
But with the gray areas.
But
It's like, it's always.
If the council member did, recuse him or herself and there were no violations, to me, this would be not frivolous, certainly, but investigatable. But I guess if there were no violations, I would say not guilty.
Maybe then the
Unfounded.
punishment would maybe be like a letter, like maybe the first or second option. Letter of reprimand or.
And we'll also keep in mind that just because we get something from Meredith has nothing to do with their innocent guilt. Did they violate something? Did they not?
All my letter says is they met the qualifications to be forwarded to you. It's yours.
It's
Unless you have
traffic
written
ticket.
an opinion at which you would attach your prior
If I
opinion.
have written the get out of jail free card, I do attach and say I recommend it be dismissed. And it's my bad.
Getting a ticket has nothing to do with guilt or innocence. That's what the judge will.
Recommend you
deal with.
dismiss. Yeah.
So just because we get something shouldn't influence. If there was nothing there, Meredith would have not tossed it to us. That in order for it to come to us, it just has to meet these criteria and we decide.
I don't pass judgment on guilt or innocence. Yes, that's y'all's purview. Well, congratulations, you've met training. But this is exactly for y'all to know, this is how they do the articles of interest. So it's very helpful to me so that when I have to write the legal opinion or the get out of jail free card, I know, okay, so Mr. Charlie's gonna look at it from this angle, think of that. Mr. Earl's gonna look at this. Andrew's gonna do Andrew. The chair is gonna do, and it's like helps me to have feedback as we go through these to kind of give these opinions. Apparently he's going for counsel. I have not known that. Okay, so this
So a couple of days to decide.
at this point, I'm gonna pass it back to you, Madam Chair.
Yes, so have we all had a chance to review the draft revisions and the clean copy of the code of ethical conduct? Does anybody have any grammatical or additions, changes?
Question or question for clarification.
Okay, I'm gonna pause you and get to yours. You said 280. I'm gonna start on the front because I have some before we get down there. Just really quick, that way we can do it in order. 272 A. All of your ABCDs have periods at the end. A has a semicolon. So I didn't know if you wanted to consider making that a period.
Please point these out.
Does any? I'm gonna go page by page. Does anybody else have anything on the first page? No, okay. Second page, I would have a general comment. Oxford comma, pick a side and apply it. There's inconsistencies in the serial comma usage. So I would just, I don't, whether you use it or you don't use it, just choose a side. On page 2, it's 2-7. Here, so quick question, this is more of a question on F, 272F. I don't recall and I have to look through it. Is city council capitalized throughout or not? Okay, perfect. You good on that? Anyone else on page 2? Page 3, not a big deal, dealer's choice, but under de minimis, official is capitalized and throughout it looked like it was lowercase, so I didn't know if we wanted that capitalized or if we wanted it lowercase.
Official needs to be capitalized because it's defined terms. We'll do a search and replace.
Okay. Yes, it's just either, I was like, I don't.
It's a defined term, so it needs to be.
Okay. Cause like, on like page, there's others throughout, so I wasn't sure which way.
Okay, great. Thank you for catching that.
And then it says on that same de minimis section, in the parens, it says after taking in account, is it taking into account? Taking into account, I don't know. The frequency.
You get you into.
So the definition of official, in front of administrative board, it says an administrative board, advisory board. Do we just want to get rid of the and, because they both don't have it or they both need it? Member of city council, administrative board, advisory board, or candidate for city council? Or member of city council and administrative board and advisory board, or candidate for city council? This is minutia. I can email it.
Okay, so.
Okay. Section C, same section, but scroll down or not. Sorry.
I just looked down.
Voting stock or shares or more. Is it shares of more than $15,000?
It's an or, because it's voting stock or shares. Or more than 15,000 votes, so we need to put something after shares.
Yeah, there was just some, I got confused in that section.
Voting stock and shares are together, and then the next qualifier is the fair market value.
Oh, throw in the Oxford commas and I think that solves that problem. From a consistency standpoint, some of your dollar figures have dollar and then the cents 00 and then others don't. So I would, again, I don't know what y'all do for ordinances, but I would just use that. Okay, I'm almost done. Anything else? Anybody else? Okay. Said that, again,
What page are you on?
I'm on page 4.
I've got one on page 4.
Okay, you go, please.
Okay. All right, all right. We've got 2 letter Bs.
Oh, thank you.
What should the second one be?
We have that one.
7A?
So I think we need to just read those.
I wouldn't watch Sesame Street.
Because when you go back to refer to it.
Yeah.
No problem.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Again, splitting hairs, but there's an extra space here after C, and then there's like 2 versus your other sections only have the 1.
Okay, codifier will catch that one.
Okay. And then 12, we spelled out 12 here and here, but all throughout other places, we use the numbers versus the letters.
It's less than 100. It should be spelled out with letters.
Section B, both section Bs, frankly. I don't care, but we have, I think we have numerical values for days and things throughout, and then this was spelled out. I don't know, I just maybe look at it, not a big deal.
I believe there was a question on this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You said you had a question? Oh, I'm sorry, that you did.
I did on page.
It's 80, 2-80, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
I have one more before then. Okay, so on 2-79A3, it looks like there's missing a period at the very end of it, after the parens.
Got it.
Okay. And then I have 280, Your turn.
Well, my question is, so I noticed on previously in 277, 278, the edit versions, there was the change from his and her to they, and then it looks like on E,
Thank you.
it's his relative.
Thank you.
Good catch. That was one of our revisions.
I'll do another form. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is really a question on 2-80A. At the very end, it says the listing or services or the lending of credit, and then it goes comma to the city. Do we need that comma before to the city, before the preposition? That's what you say.
You got that, that comma fine.
Um. Here's Chris.
I didn't have any others on it too.
That's what I had thus far. Just search and update the commas and the dollars. I'm sorry, I took the compliance hat off and put the audit hat on, so it just, it's.
I think that, thank you.
That page.
Yes. Oh, I'm done. You go, whatever you have is great.
I noticed in the revisions that members was changed to official. And an A during the member service should be during this official service.
What section? Thank you.
285A first.
Wow, yes, thank you.
And then in B, it says no former member. Should it be no former official? And then the following sentence at the end, expiration of the official's most recent term of office.
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
Thank you.
I write handbooks for a living, so.
Thank you.
On page 8, section 294A1 and 2, it has the city manager or his designee. Should it be there?
And then in 3 it is again.
Oh, yes, and 3.
Replace.
I believe this is an addition. Should it be indented
Oh, yes.
and not left justified? Yeah. We think all the additions, the remaining document are the same. Need to- 12. June, 13, sections 204 and 205.
Teacher,
With that,
were you ever an English teacher?
no, the school administrator for 20 years, so.
I'm sorry, what were your changes for 104 and 105?
The indent,
Oh, the intent, okay.
they were all the new additions.
But I get for accept all changes. Thank you.
And should there be a space between A and B?
Yes, ma'am.
Is the independent ethics review board a defined term?
So it needs to be capitalized.
Yeah. On 299.
Page 12, yeah.
Yeah, they need to be capitalized throughout.
Yeah, it's throughout because I'm at 2103 and
You already mentioned that one.
no.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying, it's not just where you're at, it's further down too.
It's throughout.
100.
It's throughout. I have a thing with the codifier where I capitalize, they uncapitalize, but yes. I will. Right. Capitalize. What else should I got?
I have a question, but it's,
I asked it.
I know, but like, we've kind of moved past this. But during your training, I noticed something and I didn't know if it's too late that we should discussion.
No, if you have, let's get it right.
The only thing I noticed, so when you were talking about gifts. I didn't recall that it was as a guest only for food, and I went back to the code and your training is absolutely correct, it's $500. For food only, but then on section 6, where we talk about what you must disclose, I almost feel like we should, it says a statement that the aggregate value of the gifts are believed to exceed the sum of $100 if received as a gift, or $500 if received as a guest. But that part didn't re-specify food, and I know that could be possibly redundant, but I feel like if you just skim to that part on the disclosure, you might miss that it's not okay if it's not food.
Go to a baseball game.
That's what I was thinking, it was like front row at the
Value
Astros
is
game and
$5,000.
showing them a guest. Well, that's not what this says. I don't know. I just didn't know if it would be in this section B, if received as a guest for food. Or, for food items or whatever the language is. I didn't know if adding a preposition or some sort of a qualifier on that B would provide clarity in case someone didn't read the requirements and skip to the disclosure section. They're together, but. I noticed that because I went back to reference it when you were doing your training, because in my mind, I thought it was like $500. Like I can go to the Astros game and sit front row and only have a popcorn. Well, that's not what that says.
I apologize, I'm lost.
Oh,
I'm looking
You're
at
okay.
it.
So I will give me this. I got it.
Page 4, it goes on to page 5.
It's page 5 that I'm looking at specifically, but it does start on page 4, 2-78 acceptance of gifts and disclosure of gifts.
I'm looking at the wrong 6. I was looking at B6. Okay.
Sorry, I did just jump around. So, the first B says,
Okay, I see what you're saying.
it says, it gives the description, but the second one, where you talk about the actual disclosure that must contain, it just says $500 if received as a guest. I was asking if perhaps we would include a preposition or a qualifier, like for food items or for, because if I just go to the disclosure, it looks like maybe it could be confusing. That was my only thought.
You could be a guest at an entertainment venue
Correct.
that could easily go over.
So $500 for food if received as a guest?
Yes.
Do you want to clarify what guest is?
I think we do that earlier, right? Didn't we do that somewhere? No?
And B, the second B. If the official receives gifts of food from a person or vendor that reasonably appeared to exceed $100 in aggregate value for the previous 12 months, if received as a gift, or $500 in individual value if received as a guest.
I would think it's understood since it says from a person or vendor. I don't think we need to clarify who the food is from.
In, the second B, it starts with gifts of food from a person. second B really relates to food. Okay?
Oh, does it?
Yes, if you read, the second B, it says an official who received gifts of food from a person or vendor that exceed $100 or 500 as a guest.
Oh, the whole section.
The whole section is referring to food.
From state. Yeah, I thought that was a quote from state.
So that whole section and all the 1 through 6 is all related to food.
I hear what you're saying. See, when I skipped to that and flipped it over during the training, I just saw this as the disclosure.
Mhm.
Well, then I don't have as much of an issue with it.
Because the 100 one is in the first B, and then the food one is the second B.
In my notes, but I believe that's a quote of state law.
It does mention it in there. Pursuant to VTCA, Local Government Code, Chapter 176. So it, you mean,
Yes, ma'am. Good check. Like changes or you?
No, I mean. It's open for discussion, but because on my chain, it spanned the 2 pages, I didn't see the lead-in sentence for that. And the lead-in sentence provides the clarity that I was looking for. So I'm fine with it then. I just wanted to read if there wasn't that clarity in that lead-in sentence, like then I was a little bit confused.
Does anybody else have desire changes to that?
We'll just had a few more changes on page 12 and 13. Section 103, 106, 7 and 8. Needs to be left justified.
Well, that was where I brought in probably indented or left justified.
Oh, I think they need to be.
As you look at the entire document, everything is indented, every paragraph. And so, if that's the case, then
Oh, that was intentional.
the new addition would have to be. Otherwise, everything's left justified. Assuming. Same topic, if we look at section 2101, page 11. All the A, B, C, and D, E are left justified. But in section 2103, is it because there's a paragraph before? Then the
Mhm.
succeeding letters are indented, correct?
I mean,
I saw the rest
that would
of
be
it.
my interpretation.
So I'm assuming that's correct, but.
I have verified on the rest that is state law.
Perfect.
Just from that.
But just for food.
So, I apologize for formatting errors. We will get all this and we'll do a better find and search on the capitalization.
Are we still your favorite board?
Especially since you're catching all these time on front of city council, having them pointed out. So do y'all have any other changes I can make?
That was just carry them through,
Yeah.
all the little nitpicks.
No, I appreciate it because it's much better for you to point it out here than to have it codified and me go, oh my gosh. Because then I have to go to Linda and Linda gets really mad if I'm gonna make her submit it twice because I an error.
It's our job to make you look good.
I appreciate that. So did you got me?
It's our job to make us.
I did have one final question, sorry. The title is Article 4 Code of Ethical Conduct with the one at the top. Is that, or there's supposed to be a footnote that defines what the one is,
Okay, so
or?
yes, and it will be there. I have printed this off the web, and this was not me, yay. It was changed, the name of the code used to be something else. So the one is a footmark and it will go back to the code of the ordinance at the bottom, and it's a reference to what the name used to be. So those are the references. Anytime something's changed, on the code, and I did delete them from, otherwise, under each provision, if you go to our code of ordinances, under each section, it's gonna have kind of a paragraph of italics. So it'll be, it was originally enacted with this ordinance, this date, comma, this ordinance, this date was a revision, and it'll go through that. So some places in our code will be this big, like on the fees, because we do those annually. Some places may not have any because it's a new provision. So yes, I do know that one. Ending on a high note.
Do we have any other changes, comments, questions? We're glad y'all are here.
Thank you very much.
That you were participative and having a dialogue. If there are no other comments, we have a motion to.
Motion that we adjourn this wonderful meeting.
All in favor? Meeting